It took almost a week to get the Week 6 games in, but what a week it was. We'll recap it all right here on the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report, and it starts right now. Varsity Sports Network, and this is the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report, your one-stop shop to get all the top stories in Fredericksburg area high school football. As always, very happy to be partnered with the good folks from the Freelance Star. Happy you found us here at Fredericksburg.com, and happy to be joined by some of my very good friends from the FLS varsity team. We have two of them here this week. First off, we have sports reporter Mr. Nathan Warters. I decided to drop the T this time. How you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Have you dried off? It was a wet several days here.
Oh yeah,
you're good.
I'm all dry now.
You're all good. We also have the assistant sports editor for the Freelance Star, Mr. Justin Rice. Justin,
I'm going to quibble with you. You said this was your one-stop shop. We want you to stop here.
Oh, yeah.
We want you to stop at flsvarsity.com. We want you to stop and see us on Twitter. You know, we like a multi-stop shop. We think that's a better approach.
Okay, but we condense it all right down here. If you want more details, you can catch all the good articles and things.
Your first
We distill
stop.
it. Okay, your first stop.
This is the duty-free stop.
Well, why don't we jump right into the games? Rain certainly impacted a number of games around the area this past week. Colonial forged Garfield, one of them, a 6A matchup. This game was actually moved forward a day to Thursday. Justin, you were at this game a little bit one-sided, however.
Yeah, my first chance to see Forge this year, and they look great. You know, they spread the ball around to different kids, 12 different ball carriers, led by Antonio McCray. Antonio had 10 carries for 129 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had, I think, 106 yards or so on his first 8 carries, all in the first quarter. It was one of those games where Forge maybe could have named the score they want. Right? Getting better, right?
Yeah, and I think this is a young team. This is a team that was kind of getting some new guys acclimated to their system, their way of doing things, and I think they're kind of getting into that groove now. And this is a big opportunity for them to get a lot of guys some playing time. 12 ball carriers. I mean, that's to get that many guys involved in the offense, and then on defense to have that many turnovers. I think after that Mountain View game, I think that defense was kind of chomping at the bit. So to come out here and to force that many turnovers, that's a big thing.
6 interceptions, like sort of everybody got a chance to pick a ball off. The Eagles were definitely in control of this one. Looked good coming off the bye.
And Coach Brown's got to be happy about the performance of the team and the fact that he was able to get so many kids in and get some playing time. They're sitting atop the standings right now for the 6A South, so they're prepping for postseason.
In their half of the 6A South, importantly.
6A South,
but certainly, you're looking at Woodbridge. Hilton's been kind of up and down. Maybe Battlefield, is in the north, but Woodbridge and Hilton certainly. Forest Park this week is another team that's always in that mix. Colonial Forge looking pretty good in the 6A, I think.
And looking very good in their 46-7 victory over Garfield. Cortland and Liberty tangled this past Thursday, another game that was moved up due to weather. Cortland with the victory, a milestone victory for the Cougars.
Yeah, win number 100 for the Cougars coach J.C. Hall. And I think we celebrate round numbers. For some reason we've decided that's the way to do it. But 100's great. It means, number one, you've been there for a long time, long enough to really own a program and put your stamp on it. And J.C. Hall certainly has. And you look at the stats from this game. Victor Green with 10 carries for 150 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And Blair Lawson with 11 carries for 127 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. They sort of won J.C. Hall's 100th game in J.C. Hall style, running the wing tee, doing it the Cortland way.
No doubt, no doubt. There was another event that happened at this game, however. There was a significant injury to one of the Liberty players. Nathan, I know that you had written an article just a couple of weeks ago about the absence of ambulances at Spotsylvania County games. That might have been helpful in getting that policy changed. There was actually an ambulance at this game, and so the player got some rather quick medical attention.
Yeah, the point of the story that I wrote a couple weeks ago was Spotsylvania County didn't have a policy to put ambulances at all their games in the county. I'm not sure if Cortland had ambulances at their games before. It was up to the ADs to get that stuff worked out. So they might have had an ambulance anyway, regardless, but I got an email from a doctor who was on site there and said that it was prompt, it was thorough, the care. They had the ambulance on site, got the kid on there immediately. The kid's doing well. It's good to see that the focus is on getting it done quickly, getting the kid in the ambulance and getting them to the hospital. And this was an instance of them doing that.
Good, good. Like to hear those kinds of outcomes. And certainly, I mean, I think your article at least brought to attention the fact that that was needed and was an absence there. So thank you for that. Cortland, and congratulations to Coach J.C. Hall, a big 54-20 victory over Liberty. Yet another game that was impacted by rain was moved forward to Thursday night. It was homecoming for North Stafford. North Stafford taking on Osborne Park. The Wolverines roll up some big numbers and compile a 39-10 victory over Osborne Park. Nathan, this Devin Ford kid, we've got some good running backs from around the area. Ford certainly has got to be part of that top list.
Absolutely, and he was only 14 the last time I saw him. He's a freshman, and he's doing some big things for them. Adds a real good running element to that offense. They're so balanced now. Jimmy Edwards passed for 180 yards in this game, 3 touchdowns. Guy Keith, their receiver, had 2 touchdown catches. He's a playmaker. He makes big plays every week. And Devin Ford, Nakem Morton, these guys are just they're all kind of forming this balanced offense now, and they're doing really well.
Yeah, I agree. That's what strikes me about North Stafford is every week they can beat you in several different ways. I mean, they're scoring big points, and Nakem Morton, who is great, didn't run back a kick this week, and and they're still putting up big points with Devin Ford, of course, and Jimmy Edwards. I think he's having a very efficient year getting the ball to Guy Keith and things like that, and they just look really well balanced.
Coach Mangano likes to feed a hot running back. He has been honestly rather careful about giving too many carries to Devin Ford so far. This may have been his heaviest workload of the year. 24 carries, 158 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's racked up some impressive numbers with not the kind of carries that we typically see from a North Stafford running back.
Yeah, Von Purvis, of course, a couple years ago was getting a ton of carries, and they were happy to hand him the ball. Yeah, I think that speaks to North Stafford, right? There's just more options for him.
There's more options, but I also think you kind of learn from those experiences. I think Coach Mangano is probably thinking back to Von Purvis and the turf toe he had a couple weeks, and he had some nicks and bruises that he had to get over with. And so to have a kid that's this young that you want to kind of protect throughout the year, you don't want to ride that horse for too long. You want to, if you have the playmakers, you want to keep those guys all involved, and they have a ton of guys involved now. And having the run game work as well as they have, that just opens up so many things. It's what they didn't have last year. They got it this year. Edwards is a year older. This is a good offensive team.
Yeah, speed to burn. North Stafford, 39-10 victory over Osborne Park. The Eastern View Cyclones took on Culpeper this past week. This game was moved to Thursday because of the rain. You would expect, Nathan, that a team with the nickname Cyclones would do well in the rain, and in fact that was the case here. 35-0 victory for Eastern View.
I see what you did there. That was clever.
Yeah. Clever, huh?
I found it really intriguing that a lot of teams were passing the ball on Thursday night in a driving rain. At least the game I was at, this game, it was raining the entire game, and I asked Coach Hatfield after the game, what was your game plan? He goes, we just wanted to run straight ahead, keep it as simple as possible. And it says something about a team where you can just kind of line up, play your power run game, and the other team can't do anything about it. And that's what Eastern View did. They just ran. They ran behind Josh Stallings, their quarterback, who had 208 yards, 3 touchdowns rushing, also had a 2-point conversion run. Justin Pollard, who has been back for a couple weeks after that collarbone injury, he's running the ball well. They just lined up. Their offensive line did work, and they just moved the ball at will, and it was a pretty simple plan.
I saw a quote from another coach talking about Stallings and describing it at this point as just another huge power running back they have back there right now. And, Stallings, as great as he looked, I feel like throwing the ball last year. I mean, his running game this year, we didn't consider that was the answer to Kendrick Cuby, right, where they were going to get their running game. They're just going to run Josh Stallings a bunch.
Yeah, I talked to him after the game, and he says he's being recruited by Division I schools as a fullback or a tight end. So, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. So, he's perfect for that at the next level. So,
absolutely,
big game for him.
A bruiser. 26 carries, 208 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns for Josh Stallings. In fact, that was enough to earn him the Freelance Star Player of the Week honors. So, congratulations to Josh Stallings from Eastern View, this week's Player of the Week. And congratulations to Eastern View on their 35-0 victory over Culpeper. Spotsylvania hosted Washington and Lee. Game moved up to Thursday due to the weather. The Knights with a 41-14 victory. Just an impressive game here.
Yeah, let me see. Come on, all you Spotsy fans. Let me see you clap your hands, right? Yeah, that's 41 points for Spotsy and, 500 yards rushing, 233 yards from Reeser Cabo and 2 touchdowns. Michael Shelton chips in with 132 yards on 19 carries and a touchdown. And, of course, Michael Janello with 14 carries for 117 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a huge rushing day for Spotsy. That's one of Spotsy's best offensive outputs in years, maybe a decade. Just a real good showing for them against a W&L team that I thought had really shown signs of sort of maturing and getting better the last couple weeks. I think coming into this game, I like this as sort of a pick'em game, and Spotsy plays real well and gets a 41-14 win. The Knights, importantly, you have games against Caroline, you have games against King George. You're playing for a playoff spot in those games.
Impressive running performance, and particularly given the weather. So, Nathan, you were saying you were seeing teams that were passing the ball in that torrential downpour really on Thursday. Spotsy certainly did not do that. They were lots of runs, lots of running. 3 different running backs exceeding 100 yards. This was almost a Cortland-like performance.
Yeah, and this is a run-heavy offense, but maybe they discovered some guys. I mean, Ricabo, I'd not heard that name before. He comes out here and rushes for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, maybe they find some guys. Okay, this guy, he could be a guy that could get some carries from here on out. So, when you play in the conditions like that, sometimes maybe you kind of find something out about yourself. Okay, we can pound it. We can have a power running game and do really well. And maybe Spotsy did that.
Not just like the Cortland offense, it is the Cortland offense. Running the wing tee, Tim Coleman aided on the installation. Spotsy looking pretty good doing it.
I was trying to tee it up for one of you there, and so you took a big swing at it, so that's great. Spotsy with their second victory of the season and they've looked strong in the 2 wins. I mean, we're seeing some improvement.
And they got a chance coming ahead. I feel like they can play for a playoff spot.
Yeah, there you go. Spotsylvania with a 41-14 victory over W&L. Chancellor hosted 6A James River in a matchup that was a potential test for Chancellor. They stand up to this test quite nicely, a 42-7 victory. Mario Wisdom, 20 carries, 163 yards, rushing, and 4 touchdowns. A big game from Jason Brown here as well. Nathan, I'm very impressed by this Chancellor team.
Yeah, and I know Coach Oliver, this was one of those games that he was looking at, okay, James River is a Division VI opponent. This is kind of a part of that gauntlet of a schedule they've got going on. For them to go into this game on a Thursday night, to win as decidedly as they did, and they've got so many guys getting involved in this offense. I mean, Kamoni Dunn now, just add another name to the list of skill guys they have, a 72-yard touchdown reception. Jason Brown was great in this game at quarterback, and Wisdom's been consistent. He's been good, and 4 touchdowns. That's an impressive effort, and these guys are rolling right now.
I think Chancellor's actually exceeded their win total from last year already. They moved to 4-1 on the season now. They've got a big matchup. We'll talk about it a little bit later against Cortland coming up next week. But the Chargers got to be feeling good about where they are right now.
Hey, there's guys at this table right now that would have bet against 4 Chancellor wins in their first 5 games. There's at least one person sitting right here. I think that's definitely true.
I'll admit it. Yeah, I mean, but I've become a believer. I like the way this Chancellor team is put together.
That's a great to get your first to go 4-1 in the first 5 is great for Chancellor.
Yeah,
great shape for the playoffs. Playing real well. Big game this week.
They've got a couple of big games looming. Take them one at a time. But yeah, big game coming up this week. But a big victory, 42-7. Chancellor defeats James River. Brooke Point took a visit to Patriot. This game was moved to Monday and actually had wonderful weather. Brooke Point coming away with a 48-26 victory, and Damone Drew with yet another big game. Awfully impressive running back here.
Yeah, and he did it with half the workload that he's been getting all season. 148 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns on 17 carries. He had 38 carries last week in their game. And I talked to Tommy Buzzo earlier in the week for Player of the Week feature I did on Drew, and he said we want to kind of take some of the load off of him so that we're not putting too much pressure on him physically, especially on the offensive side. This is a good indication of what they're capable of. They had 30 rushes, 30 passes, spread the ball around. Brock Carnes had a big game, 276 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. They got their receivers involved. Just a really good, balanced offensive effort by Brooke.
What kind of quarterback would you say Carnes is? They've gotten a lot of nice games out of him. This one included.
He makes good decisions. I mean, I'll say the first pass he threw bounced off of one of his own players and into the hands of a defender who ran it back for a touchdown. But that was a kind of a fluky play. I think he's good. I think he's a good leader. I think he distributes the ball well. He got his receivers involved in the offense. He's a good quarterback. I think he's one of the best in the area in terms of passing the ball. So he's an asset for them.
And they definitely have weapons outside on the edge, with Maurice Jones and Donovan Fobbs.
Some youth as well, though. It sounded like this was a back-and-forth game early on. Maybe halftime, coach settled them down and turned things around for the second half.
I think early second quarter is when the tide kind of turned. The first 13 minutes or so, there were 6 touchdowns scored in that period of time. It was 20-20 early in the second quarter, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And all of a sudden, Brooke Point just kind of started rolling. I think they scored 4 straight touchdowns at that point and really kind of took control. They only gave up 2 offensive touchdowns. One was a pretty good drive by Patriot. They passed the ball the entire time. The other one, it was a second-team defense that gave it up. So good defensive effort by Brooke Point, I would say as well.
That's a lot like the Mountain View Patriot game, of course, the week before. Patriot kind of touchdown for touchdown with Mountain View for a little while, and then at some point Mountain View wins out. I think notably, of course, with this one, you look at the Stafford schools, North Stafford, Brooke Point, Forge, and Mountain View against the Prince William, Manassas, those schools, Gainesville, of course, with Patriot, Nokesville, I guess, undefeated this year.
Yeah.
The tide has definitely shifted.
That group, the only losses have been amongst themselves. Games that someone has to lose because impressive performance so far this season from Spotsylvania County.
Stafford County.
Stafford County, Stafford County high schools.
Yeah.
Including Brooke Point 48-26 victory over Patriot. James Monroe and Essex battled in a long-time rivalry. This game was at JM. And JM coming away with a 35-6 victory over Essex, and a good all-around performance from JM here.
Yeah, absolutely. And this had all the makings of like a trap game, an upset game, maybe ooh, what's going to happen here? JM had been off for 16 days since they had played a game with their bye week. Essex has, I think, looked very good. They certainly are one of the best teams in the 1A East. They're a big, strong team who's physical, and that's a formula that's given JM problems. Of course, the light comes on Monday night at Morey Stadium, and the Jackets, Essex made it 7-6 earlier, and then it was all JM the rest of the way.
Were there really cobwebs in the press box
there? Was literally cobwebs in the press box. I was not lying.
Okay.
Cobwebs in every press box.
This is true.
But AJ Felton had no cobwebs from his his layoff. 7 of 10 for 152 yards through the air with 2 touchdowns, rushed 11 times for 70 yards, and I think most importantly, when you look at when he was making the plays, it was on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 7, 4th and 15 in one case. He threw a 25-yard touchdown pass. Those are the plays. Those are the plays that really, really count. I think the 3rd and the 4th downers, and that's what AJ Felton was giving them.
Absolutely, and those are the morale boosters for your team and the morale breakers for the opposition. No doubt,
absolutely.
No doubt.
What's really stood out to me about JM is that they've scored a lot of points, but they're getting a lot of guys involved. They have a lot of ball carries. You don't see like one guy just dominating ball games. It seems like they just have a lot of playmakers at this point. Every week a new guy kind of steps up there.
Yeah, and it seems like they're really trying to, I don't know if they're going to try to figure out who the ball carrier is, who the running back is, or if they're just content to go, here's your 11 carries, here's your 11 carries, here's your 12 carries, and do it that way and beat you with weapons, beat you with a volume of weapons. Certainly at the receiver spot, it's the same case. The ball's getting distributed. There's no Jerma Bevels. There's nobody like that. They're going to spread it around and hand it off to a lot of different guys. And looking pretty strong right now.
Been effective thus far. JM goes to 4-1 on the season, a 35-6 victory over Essex. Take a look at some other games from around the area, starting with Massaponax. Ponax goes to 5-0 on the season, a 28-7 victory over Stonewall Jackson. 4 different carriers run the ball for touchdowns for Massaponax in that victory, an easy 28-7 victory over Stonewall Jackson. Orange with a 20-16 victory over Albemarle.
4-1 Hornets.
How about that?
Best start since they were 4-0 in 2006.
Yeah, big victory for Orange. Congratulations to them. Colonial Beach gets on the win column with a 58-24 victory over Charles City. How about that?
Yeah, Lamar Lucas with a big game. I think he'd been kind of quiet all year because they faced a pretty tough schedule there. 226 rushing yards. He had a 99-yard rush. I think that was a school record.
Tied the school record. Can't beat it, but
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
but I think there's two important notes from the Colonial Beach game. Number one, 570 team rushing yards. Challenges one of the best team rushing performance of all time. You know, we've got some sketchy records with some teams that are missing. Certainly one of the best team rushing performances ever for a single team. And the other important note is this: only 12 teams making the playoffs from the 1A East. A surprise to me, a surprise to Colonial Beach actually. Top 16, not 16.
Only 12.
Going to give out 4 byes. 12 teams go. Colonial Beach just got their first win. Can't afford many more losses. You got Essex, you got W&L left, plus the rest of the Northern Next schedule. Colonial Beach, time to turn it on.
Wow,
Yeah.
how about that?
Yeah.
That's a surprise to me as well.
Yeah.
I did not realize. Louisa with a very big 62-6 victory over Fluvanna. Job Whalen, 190 yards rushing in this one. Dejan Shelton with a big game as well. Malik Bell also tops the century mark. Louisa with a strong performance against Fluvanna there. Forest Park and Riverbend tangled, a 28-27 victory for Forest Park. The Bears fall to 1-5 on the season. They've lost some heartbreakers here. They continue to find ways to lose close games. Bears 1-5.
Well, you're in these games and you're playing tough 6A teams, and there you go. Are the playoffs over for Riverbend? Gosh, the path is very narrow, I'm sure.
They got to get healthy too. I mean, that's the thing. It's just been a hard luck season for them because they've had to deal with injuries. They've had to deal with, fluky plays here and there. I think they had a couple extra points blocked in this game. Just an unlucky start to the year for Riverbend. If they get things turned around, at least there's still some time to get some wins there. But they've got to get healthy and they got to get things rolling.
Interception at the goal line on the next to last play of the game seals the fate for Riverbend. They fall to Forest Park 28-27. King William with a 35-7 victory over Caroline. And then finally Osborne with a 20-13 victory over Stafford.
Yeah.
Stafford with a lot of turnovers in that game.
Yeah.
That's a look at the other area games around the Fredericksburg region. Week 7 in Fredericksburg area high school football certainly is shaping up to be an interesting week. We have some teams that really have performed quite well thus far into the season, and that means that we've got some big-time matchups looming, not just this week, but in the weeks ahead. But let's look at Week 7 to start off with, fellas. Which of these wonderful games most intrigues you?
I think Forest Park Colonial Forge is clearly the most important game for this area, right?
Can I give you a little Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend? I think you already did that earlier today, but Chancellor at Cortland, we got a huge rivalry game there, both 4-1. That's a huge matchup there. I think you had an interesting stat about
Chancellor Cortland. This is here we go, digging deep into the numbers. This is the fewest combined losses for in a Chancellor Cortland game since 1990. That year, Chancellor came into the game 4-1, was headed for the state semifinals. Cortland was 5-0, was heading for a 7-4 season. At no other point have both these teams entered the game with as few as 2 combined losses.
So a couple of teams that have some rich history, but it's been a while since both teams have been, let's say, at the top of their game and met each other in the same year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, best Chancellor Cortland game in the last 20 years, I think is pretty fair.
Maybe 25.
Maybe.
Years. Yeah. That's it should be. I hope that it's a good game. It certainly bodes well. Lots of storylines leading up into this one. Do we know yet who's going to be covering it? Who gets the cake?
That is a deep, dark secret right until kickoff there. Maybe you ask us, Nathan, I don't know who to say. People say, who's going to win Chancellor Cortland? I have no idea.
I don't either. I mean, I think, we talked about Chancellor earlier about, them kind of going on this roll here. I don't think any of us really thought that they were going to be this good, and they are. They clearly are. They've proven to be, a strong team. Cortland strong yet again. both these teams just have so much talent. I flip a coin at this point for me.
Yeah, and it's contrasting styles, of course. Chancellor's going to bring Jason Brown, and they're going to try to throw the ball a little bit. Cortland is going to hand the ball off and hand the ball off and hand the ball off, hand the ball off again, and then maybe try to throw it deep to Jabari Allen. Defense, maybe Cortland's defense has been a little more tested, maybe. But, they've both played really good schedules. They've both played good opponents. They've both put up a lot of points. It's you got a coin to flip. Do we have one?
Is this going to be one of those 10-7 games again, like Massaponax, Cortland to start the year? I mean, we're talking, you're hyping up the offenses there, but I think they both have really good defenses as well. These are two really well-rounded teams and an exciting matchup. I can tell you definitively, I will not be there, sadly. So somebody will have the pleasure.
You'll be enjoying South Beach, right?
No, I'll be in Blacksburg covering college football. But,
I think the key thing with Chancellor and Cortland, I think when you talk about playoff implications, I think the winner here has got a great chance to finish in the top 4 in the 4A East. The loser, you're still at home in the playoffs. You're still at home at least one round, maybe in 2 rounds, but I think the winner here definitely has a little bit of an advantage there. That's a great one. And then everybody in Stafford County is going, well, hold on a second.
Brooke
Point North Stafford.
As a person who covers a lot of Stafford County football, this is the one that I'm really looking at is Brooke Point at North Stafford. Both teams are 4-1. Both teams have these really balanced offenses with great tailbacks. They're both really dynamic. I don't know who to pick in this one either, but it's going to be an exciting, fun matchup of 2 of Stafford County's best. And like we said earlier, there's a lot of really good teams in Stafford County.
Yeah, and you were saying there, you were talking about Chancellor and Cortland and the chance of that being a defensive struggle. I don't think there's a chance Brooke Point North Stafford is a low-scoring game. I think that's a high-scoring game.
No, I think they both figure out a way to put some points on the board there, and if it's not on offense, that it could be Knockham Morton. It could be the special teams.
Maybe. They definitely have those weapons. Both teams all around the ball. Great game. Forest Park Colonial Forge is an important game this week.
It is an important game. Yes.
Big 6A South game. Forest Park is 4-1. Colonial Forge is 5-1. You clearly at this point like the strength of the Stafford schools over the Prince William schools, but Forest Park is 4-1 coming off a game against Riverbend, a win. I think that's a good game. Spotsy King George also, a pretty important game for 2 teams that, maybe can't quite afford a loss if they want to talk about making a playoff trip at the end of the season. The 2 teams that really want to win that one.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that that this week's games have lined up. I can't remember, at least for me in recent memory, a week this deep into the season where we have so many teams with winning records playing against each other in games that truly matter. Good matchups. It's just a joy.
Yeah, and Mountain View Potomac is one of those Conference 15 games. It's a big one. Powhatan Louisa is a big Jefferson District game. There's a bunch of really good games here between I think the very best teams and then those second tier teams that are sort of saying no wait, we're playoff teams. Well, this is a big week for those teams. Big week for those teams.
No doubt. Lots of good games that are on the docket for this week. I hope you're able to get out and get to see at least one of these awesome Fredericksburg area high school football games. Well, that's a wrap for this week's Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. An interesting week to cover in retrospect, all the weather that has affected Week 6. And the weatherman doesn't seem to be cooperating all that well for this coming Friday for games either. Unlikely that any games will be moved, but likely that there's going to be some precipitation for really a very impressive array of games that we've got ahead of us.
We'll see what happens. I feel like last week, lots of blowouts, lots of lopsided games, like the great big inhale before, okay, here we come. We got some meaningful ones coming up this week, starting with this week.
The appetizers before the main courses. And I think we've got several courses coming ahead of us because looking ahead to next week and the week after, we've got some very intriguing games, at least in my mind. Interesting to see how some of these teams shape up here.
Let's take it one game at a time, Mark. 1 week at a time. There we go.
It's easy for us to say. It's important for the players and coaches to do that. I certainly appreciate the time. I hope that you have enjoyed this week. We certainly always enjoy having you. Appreciate the great feedback. Hope you've enjoyed our time here with Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. I always enjoy my time with the good folks from the Freelance Star. Justin Rice, Nathan Warters, 2 of the very best. You guys are busy. I appreciate the time. It's always a pleasure and a treat. Thanks fellas.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching again. For the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, my name is Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching, everyone.